Thank you so much, and good morning, everybody. It's truly an honor for me to be with all of you today. As you can tell, I have a beautiful southern accent. It's all the way south to Colombia. So I'm just going to give you a few notes first to adjust and make sure that you can stay with me throughout the presentation. As my friend you just said, Didi just said, I'm here not as a theologian. I'm here to share with you the realities that I have experienced in the church in the last 6 months. And hopefully you will be able to take from this presentation some pieces to meditate upon, some pieces to celebrate, some pieces to make your faith a little bit stronger, because you can see through those lenses a new and a renewed encounter with Christ in the church. So before we start, we have this big sign that says, congratulations, you have made it. We have survived this COVID-19 for 6 months. And I know it has been a very difficult time. It has been a painful time for many of us. The uncertainty, the pain, the challenges that have arisen have taken a little bit of our joy and our hope away from us. But now, I also want to say, friends, remember, we are in this together, and it's a difficult time. I feel like sometimes we have to be more patient with each other. We need to understand that all of us are struggling a way or another. It's like we are wearing these life jackets and we're in the middle of the lake and the water is very choppy and we feel like we're drowning. And the sad thing is that we still don't know where is the other side of this journey. But what I want you to do is that today, as a group, as a community, we're going to gather and we're going to try to support each other through these moments and hopefully give new lenses of hope for the way that we're going to experience the future. So let me take you to the journey of the 4 stages that I have seen so far I have experienced with COVID-19. First stage, COVID-19 news came. We are aware that this is happening worldwide. And I'm not gonna lie, for like the first 2 or 3 weeks, I kind of moved into an emergency mode. I was trying to figure it out, where to find the food, where to find the groceries, where was the toilet paper, and all those stresses that we have there. But then it came very quickly that everything started to be closed. When I received the call from my university at Notre Dame, where I work, and they say, Katherine, we don't want you to come back to the office. We want you to work from home. When all my extracurricular activities got canceled, because of my work, I have to travel a lot. So I can tell you since March, I have canceled 16 trips for different dioceses. That kind of started to change, and it started to bring a little bit of silence into my routine. A silence that sometimes is not welcome, but it's in the midst of that silence that we can see and recognize that God is present and that He's speaking to us, letting us be aware of what reality we're embracing. My own personal job, I work with a lot of priests from around the nation, and that period of time before Easter, it became a lot of phone calls with emergencies, with the priests or the dioceses, with their teams, trying to figure it out how to embrace Easter in a new way. And I have to say, I would never have expected that Easter was celebrated the way that we celebrated this past year. But do you remember that picture of Pope Francis taking us to the Holy Week? And how powerful that image was? Not just the image, but the celebration itself. I don't know about you, friends, but for me, it was that deep eagerness to be with Christ, and I couldn't. I don't think I was ever so eager to be part of the Holy Week celebration. But this time, I was very connected. And then I was just so loving the idea of our universal church, that not just the people from your parish, not just the people from your diocese, but the people from around the world that was experiencing this pandemic. We were looking at our shepherd, and he was guiding us through those hard moments. The gift of our universal church that so many times, even our young people don't realize from time to time. They think that they are just part of a small community. No, our church is universal. And through this Easter, the Pope Francis took us through that journey and made it so significant for so many. But then the next stage came, and I experienced this especially with the leaders of the parishes, where they started to call me and say, Katherine, we survived Easter, but this is it? We're still online? We still cannot gather? What is going to happen to the church? all these stresses that were coming into our ministries. And then we have to go back and root our strength in the living Word of God. Root our strength in the gift of the online masses. Root our strength in the understanding that we can still be church, although we couldn't gather together during this period of time. It wasn't easy. It was painful. But it was actually a growing moment for all of us. Unfortunately, many times we make fun that Catholics don't read the Bible. I don't know about you, but I needed the Bible. I needed scripture so strongly during this time of dryness that's what kept me alive. And that's when, again, we were reminded that it's the living Word of God. And that makes a huge change. But friends, the reality is we are not done yet. And even worse, we don't know when this pandemic, this global pandemic is going to end. So we just need to embrace life, understanding that we cannot just go back into the normal, because normal is never going to be normal again. So I just want to share with you a conversation I had with a colleague of mine, Christopher Wesley. I was doing a podcast with him 2 weeks ago, and the podcast was talking about other different things that we are experiencing in the church. But then at the end, we hung up and we started to talk, and I asked him, well, Chris, how are you doing? And he said, Katherine, actually, I just have one of the most powerful experiences recently. I went to my barber, and you know, I'm a man and I have short hair, so usually a haircut shouldn't take longer than 15 minutes. I actually spent more than 40 minutes talking to this man. Because when he started to cut my hair, he said, how are you doing? What's going on? And he knows that he also shares the faith. So Christopher very gently said, well, you know what, Mr. Barber, I don't know the name of the barber. He said, I feel like we are in the desert. I feel like God has abandoned us. I feel like we have done something wrong and all these crazy things in the world are happening. So we need to be forgiven. And until we don't change, we are not going to see that. We are walking through the desert, and I feel lost. I feel hopeless. Then his barber said, I understand the pain and the confusion. I think we all are in that moment. But this is not an exodus. We have passed that exodus. What you have to realize is that this is just a plague. And we need to start to embrace this situation as a plague, where we know that God is going to help us and protect us throughout these moments. Friends, when we look back at the book of the Exodus and we look at all the plagues that the Egyptians experienced, we need to look at it from the eyes of the Israelites. We need to understand that we are the ones that have the promised land, and we know the end of the story. We know what is in the Bible, and we know this is a hard moment, but we know this is not the end. And unfortunately, the voices that we're hearing of despair from our communities are telling us the opposite, are trying to push us away from what we believe. And that's the message that I want to tell you today, friends. Remember, we are the light of Christ in this world. Remember, although we are experiencing the death of loved ones, although we are experiencing the loss of jobs, although we are experiencing going out of the ordinary, this is the time that we have to claim to be, we are the people of God. And the people of God are here to bring that light that is so needed in our communities right now. So we can bring the joy of the gospel alive. And we can embrace these hardships by the hand of God, knowing that we have a loving God that is taking care of us and is going to take us to the journey through the promised land. So I gave you this instruction of my talk. Hopefully by now you catch up with my accent, so we're doing okay. And now we're going to go to the question that I think many of you are embracing, either with your families, with yourself, with your ministries. Why should I go back to church? Who do I encounter when I go to the physical parish? And this is a very difficult question, because if you notice, even before COVID-19, Bishop Barron, with his research, was telling us very strongly that there are a lot of Catholics that don't believe on the Eucharist, that Jesus Christ is in the Eucharist. So we already were walking into some of a dry land, unfortunately, out of poor catechesis. But now that we have been forced to be away from the church, now we are being challenged to say, why? Why should I go back? Well, I'm going to share with you different conversations I have with people in my community. that gave me an insight to start to find some of those answers. First and foremost, when we're in front of the Eucharist, we know it was Jesus Christ in the Last Supper that installed the Mass to start with. We started communion with us. But then we also have the Bible, especially in the Gospel of John. We have two important Bible verses in John 3:16 when it says, "For God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son." Or in John 6:51 when it says, "I am the living bread which came down from heaven." We know by his own words and by the living word of the scriptures that Jesus is present in the Eucharist. Then I was talking with Dr. John Cavadini, the head of the McGrath Institute, and he said, "Katherine, you know what? At this moment, more than ever, all Catholics should read the Catechism, especially the number 776. And this is what it says in that paragraph. "The Church is born primarily of Christ's total self-giveness for our salvation, anticipated in the institution of the Eucharist and fulfilled on the cross. The origin and growth of the Church are symbolized by the blood and water which flow from the open side of the crucified Jesus." Then it goes even further. "For it was from the side of Christ as he slept the sleep of death upon the cross that they came forth the wondrous sacrament of the whole Church." And even one more. "As it was formed from the sleeping Adam's side, so the Church was born from the pierced heart of Christ, hanging dead on the cross." We gathered in the church because we gathered to meet a living Christ in the body and blood of the body of blood in the Eucharist. That is something that we have plenty of education and content from more than 2,000 years that give us the strength to understand and believe that this is something that has gone through all these generations. And we can go even more in depth. Right now I'm going very abroad to just give you an idea of how all our teachings of the Catholic Church, if you are a Catholic, you know and believe in this. But then I have another conversation. In this case, my conversation was with two friends of mine and colleagues, Dr. Lenny De Lorenzo and Colleen Moore. And we were saying we gather in the parish because, as the Catechism says, this is an stable community of faith. We belong to many communities, the communities under the schools that we attended, the friends and the hobbies that we like to follow. But those communities are stable out of the desire of a human like or dislike to something. Our church is stable because our church is with Christ. Christ is the one that stabilizes our church. So no matter what realities we embrace, Christ is living in our parishes and he is the one that brings the stability to us. At the same time, I know many of you or some of you might think, well, Katherine, I go to the church and I don't feel anything. I don't feel different. I don't know why I go. Or some of you said, oh, I go because I love the priest or I love the music. Well, friends, all that is addition to. We go to the church because we're encountering Christ. But if you really want to feel connected to, you need to take the responsibility to be active in the parish. And the way that you are active is by finding either the ministry or the community or the small community that you want to be part of it, so you can journey together and discover the Christ that lives in every single one of the parishioners that is there, but also the Christ that lives in you, so you can be the witness to the people in your community. If you are not responsible, then it's very easy to be one of those Catholics that comes in and out of Mass and no one knows you and no one knows that you are missing because you never introduced yourself. You never gave a chance to the community to get to know each other. You never allowed us to have your gifts to be part of the journey of faith that we all embrace. Friends, and sometimes we say we don't want to because we already have plenty of activities in our schedule. Well, what we see is that we have a crisis of activities. We have too many activities. But we have even a deeper crisis, which is a crisis of identity. Our crisis of activities, we do a lot of things outside of the church, or maybe sometimes inside of the church, but we lose the meaning because we don't have that encounter with the other, and we don't have a deep knowledge of who we are and what we are going through in the everyday. In the research that was done in 2019 showed that more than 60% of people feel lonely in today's world. And part of that loneliness is, although because we have a very busy schedule, we are not giving ourselves the opportunity to have that growth. So what is the invitation for us to have that stable community? Come to the church, activate yourself in the different ministries and opportunities the church offers, and then be the provider of that stability that you can bring to the other. Because I'm just gonna tell you, one of the most powerful experiences in my faith was when my mom died and I went to the funeral, and I have a lot of people that came to see us. Many of them families, many of them friends of my mom, but many of them parishioners that I barely knew. And you don't know how strong it was the statement when one by one they were hugging me and giving me their words of support during that difficult journey. That stability that we can provide each other in moments of joy and moments of sorrow can only be provided in a place like our parishes. Then I have another conversation. This time was with Daniel. Daniel is a young adult. I haven't seen him in a while, so when I saw him, I was like, "Hi, Daniel, how's everything going?" And he said, "Well, Katherine, you know, the COVID-19 is hard, all that stuff." And he said, "But I just want to let you know something. My brother is the only one married of all of us. There are 4 brothers, and he was expecting his first child, his niece, and she was born. And he said, before she was born, I was excited that she was coming. It was kind of natural. It was like another step of the life's journey. But because of COVID-19, none of us have been able to go and visit her. No, my parents, none of us. So I feel like I'm an uncle, and a whole month of her life has passed by, but I haven't been able to be part of that story. And it's surprising how much it's hurting me." And I told him, "Daniel, of course it makes sense, because family is the first place where we experience that love, that care, but also that understanding of God's creation. And that's what your heart is aching for. And that's why it's so hard for many of us. For some of us, we have members that have been born. For some of us, we have lost members during this time. Some of us have seen our parents have very big birthdays and missing it because we cannot get closer to them. And that's why the church is such an important part of it. And some of you will say, "Well, Katherine, my family is not Catholic." Well, guess what? Your family, not the blood type family, not the DNA family, but your family is the community in your parish. I can tell you as an immigrant, my entire family lives, the closest that I have is 14 hours from here. And my family is in the parish. So they become my uncles and aunts and cousins that they see me every Sunday. They greet me, they share that love. They know if I'm missing, like if I'm missing a Sunday or so, they call and say what's going on. That encounter that I have with them, it lets me feel that familiar experience of the church that is so powerful for so many of us. Have you had that encounter? Have you allowed yourself to get to know enough members in your parish that you feel that like they are part of your family, your extended family? Do you feel like you're brothers or sisters of Christ? Then there is another encounter, which is an encounter with ministry. When you work in ministry, there are a lot of experiences that you have to go through. Amazing moments, but also some challenging moments. So I'm going to share with you one of the talks that I had with a parishioner one time. That was a strong question. She came to me and she said, "Katherine, you have worked in the church for all this time, and you have seen how sometimes our humanity makes things go a little bit harder. Let's say 2 ministries were against something, and they treated each other poorly. Why do you still stay in the church? Why do you still work in the church?" And I have to say to her, "Look, I know this is hard, and I know this confrontation that is happening between 2 ministries is painful for all of us. But I have been working in the church long enough to know and to see that that's our humanity. See, that's the difference. The church welcomes everybody. But unfortunately, sometimes our humanity gets on the way, and although we have good intentions, we can create something not so healthy. But I have witnessed with my own eyes how despite all those behaviors, God have made his presence powerful in every single reaction of the church. I have seen God healing hearts when confrontations come. I have seen God helping out when we have a big a collection drop, and then all of a sudden someone passes away, and they, without telling us, they had a huge donation for the church, and all of a sudden we are okay and we're ready to keep fighting for it. I have seen miracles of people that come together in prayer, and all of a sudden the community gathers together and can see a miracle of healing in front of all of us. I have seen the joy of families that start, and I have seen the sorrows of people losing and saying goodbye to our loved ones. That's why I know in the church you can encounter Christ, because this is his place. And that's why sometimes I laugh, and when the problems can become overwhelming, I just go like, okay, God, you know who I am. You know my limitations. You are in charge. I'm just gonna lay down my gifts to you, and hopefully this will make it work. That's why I believe in the ministries that we experience. I even want to share something as a youth minister, which was a huge eye-opening experience, like on my first or second year of doing youth ministry. For the first time, I realized I have one teenager that, let's say, was making my life very difficult. I have 300 teenagers, and clearly that young man didn't want to be in the youth night, but because he was getting ready for confirmation, he had to be there. So I was getting kind of excited when he was getting the day where he was going to receive his sacrament. And the day after, I kind of sang, and this is a confession to all of you, I kind of was victoriously jumping around going like, finally, he received confirmation. He's not coming back to another youth night. Well, guess what? Next Wednesday, the first young man that comes through the room was this particular man. And I look at him and I say, do you understand you already received the sacrament? Like, you really don't need to be here. I don't have a grade for you. I don't have extra points for you. And he looked at me and he said, I know. And I said, okay. And then we have the session, and he again, his behavior was very poor throughout the whole time. So the next Wednesday, I saw him come back again very early. And I said, I need to talk to you. And I told him, I just want to know, why do you come here? Clearly you don't want to be here, and you already received your sacrament, so why do you come here? And he said to me, Katherine, because you're the first person in my life that hasn't kicked me out yet. That was very hard because I was getting ready to say, please don't come back. But it was a lesson for me of growth and to understanding that the church is for everybody, and we need to give that space. And in our parishes is where we can grow to each other. I have the joyful news to say now that he's now a lawyer, an excellent lawyer, and a very active member of the church. And it was because not just me, but the community that we created with him and the challenge that we gave him. One of the things I told him is, okay, so if you want to come, then you need to change your attitude, and you need to start to show some leadership and help me out with the group, because 300 is too many for just me. And he did. He stepped up and he turned around. We experience in ministry, in the hardships and the joys, the presence of God and how he can push us to grow in our faith. The next encounter is the encounter in the sacraments. We can only celebrate our sacraments in the parish, and that is very powerful, very powerful. So I was talking to a young little girl, her name is Victoria, and since last summer, she was telling me every time I saw her, Katherine, this year is my first Holy Communion. Mark the day, mark the day. So the day was in May 2nd. Mark the day, I'm going to celebrate my first Holy Communion. And every time I gathered with her, she would say, I learned this about the Eucharist. I learned this about that. Guess what? My grandma in Mexico is actually making my dress by hand. And she's going to come, and the family from Mexico is going to come, and we're going to have this big celebration. Well, then COVID-19 came. And of course, the first Holy Communions got delayed. And in the process that we were dealing with that, she was sad because she started to learn that most likely her extended family will not be able to be there. But the other thing is that the decision that my parish made is that they started to celebrate first Holy Communions, 2 kids per Mass, some of them during the every day, some of them during the weekend masses. So she knew that her friends were not going to be there. She knew that the community was going to be very small. The grandmother had to mail the dress. And finally, at the end of July, she received her first Holy Communion. So I was outside in the parking lot celebrating with her. And then she came to me and I looked at her and I said, Victoria, so I know this is not what you were hoping for. So what does it mean, this sacrament for you now that you received Jesus? And she said, Katherine, it was very hard, but finally I was able to receive Jesus. I didn't let him go away from me. So I thought it was so beautiful and so re-energizing to see the desire that she still had to receive the sacrament. And as a little child, how she had to understand that her sacrament got delayed 2 months or so, and it wasn't what she was planning to. Friends, we thought in many cases that sacraments were not as important anymore. But this summer we saw how many couples were planning to get married and they couldn't get married in the church. Or they have to delay it, or they have to do it just with the priest. In these sacraments, we have also seen the loss of many of our parishioners that have died from COVID-19 and were not able to celebrate a funeral. I actually had a conversation with one of the priests that I serve. And he said, Katherine, I need to talk to someone. I was like, yeah, sure, I'm here. And we were in a Zoom meeting. First we did some business, and then he just started to say, I'm very hurt that I have one of my parishioners that was the most devoted Catholic. He unfortunately died of COVID-19, and none of his family members were able to say goodbye. And even worse, we cannot celebrate the funeral at this point. And he got so emotional that he said, Katherine, can you turn off your Zoom camera and can you just give me a call, because I just don't want to see myself crying on the screen. And we talked for a little bit more on the phone, but to see the pain that this is creating to so many and the value of the gifts of our sacraments. Sacraments are not just there with us. They have a very impactful experience in our life. And we can see now and hopefully reconnect of how those sacraments can bring life again into our journey of faith. Friends, now let me share with you my own personal experience with this crisis. After months of not being able to receive the communion, I finally got the email from my parish that says this many parishioners are able to come this week, and I was excited. So on Saturday, I went to my parish and I received the sacrament of reconciliation. I wanted to make sure I was just in perfect grace to receive communion. And then on Sunday, I woke up early. I dressed up like I have never dressed up for Mass before without any special celebration. And I was there very early. And I was just so joyful to be part of Mass. But this is the journey that I actually experienced. During Mass, although I have been present on the online Masses, during Mass, the Presence Mass, something that I noticed is that I was able to smell the candles. I was able to hear the music that we usually play. I was able to see the art that is in my parish. And in a sense, I felt like I went home. You know, when you go to your home and you know your home has that instinctive smell? I felt home. My parish is my home. And that brought a lot of calmness and stability to me. Then during the Mass, I paid extra attention to the celebration of Mass, to every word that the priest was saying. But then right before communion, something quite interesting happened. I don't know from where. I started to sing that song that was played when I received my first Holy Communion. I haven't sung that song for at least 30 years. I don't even know how I remembered every single word of it. And that just brought a little bit of joy to my heart. And then when they were giving the instructions of how communion was going to be given, of course, with all these new instructions that we need to follow, I started to walk through the path that was given to us. And instead of joy, I started to feel a very deep sadness for all the times in my life that I received communion. And although I was in grace, I wasn't spiritually or intellectually connected to it. I just received it. And it got to the point that by the time I got to the priest, I did have a tear going down my eye. And it was of that feeling of sorrow to understand that all the times that I really didn't get that I was receiving the communion, and the joy that I was feeling at that moment, at receiving communion again after so long. So all of us have experienced these opportunities differently. Some of you probably are back to your parishes, back to your ministries, feeling like you are reconnected again. Some of you maybe have not taken that step yet. So here is the invitation that I have for all of you. I want you to take a piece of paper, and if you are with a family, do this activity as a family. If you are by yourself, do it by yourself. If you're with your ministry friends, do it with them. And here is my question to you. Understanding that COVID-19 have awakened us to realities that we were not aware of before. The first thing I want you to know is, as a family, what kind of changes have you made since COVID-19 that you have found powerful for your family that you want to keep? I'm going to share some of the ideas of things that I have heard from people that I work with. Some of them are saying that they are enjoying tremendously to have a dinner with their families again every night, or cooking a meal together. I even heard of some families that are having one movie night a week, and at the beginning they were just choosing a family movie with not much content, but now they're actually picking movies that have interesting, important topics to share with each other and have a discussion about it. Others have decided that they realized how busy they were before, and that they understand that that busyness was keeping them apart from each other. And let's be real, I have heard also from other families that have said, we are not going to stay alive if we're still locked in the house because we are so different. They are getting to know each other again. Another point I want to look at it. If by any chance you are fulfilling your baptismal call and you are part of a ministry, either as the main leader or one of the participants, what can you see right now from this experience? That you can look back at what it was done before, and what you were doing before is great. But can you have an analytical eye and to be very close in prayer and discern with your community and with the people that you serve and say, this is something that we were doing that was good, but that might not be necessary right now. And instead use those resources and that creativity and that inspiration to the ministries that you need to develop right now. I'm going to give you a simple example, friends. Right now, more than ever, every single parish should be catechizing every member inside of the parish and outside of the parish of the importance of the Eucharist in many ways at all age groups, because a lot of our community members are kind of confused right now, or they have used this as the perfect excuse to just walk away from the church and become disaffiliated. Can we look at what we have done, celebrate the achievements that you have done before, be grateful for all the work that you have done, but can you have the flexibility to really look at what is needed in your parishes more than ever? And I assure you, evangelization is a big part of it. Even with the sacramental preparations that you offer in your ministries, go back into the regulations that your diocese has. Make sure you are fulfilling every single one of those requirements. But then just add up whatever you think is needed right now, not what you used to do, because you used to have that beautiful celebration or that beautiful tradition. You know, sometimes we get into the emotion and we forget what is really needed from our members. And what is the best way to start? Ask your people, what do you need from us right now? And then pay attention to those needs and be present to them and be that a community that can bring stability to their lives in these difficulties. Then, as an individual, my invitation to you as an individual is, what have you learned in this journey with God? Did you miss Him during these 6 months? Did you miss God? Do you see God as someone that has forgotten us? Or do you see God as someone that is protecting you and is taking you to the other side? Have you been able to see what was important in your life and realize I was taking myself to the busyness of all these activities that were not making a big difference or a fulfillment in the right places? Something that really surprised me beforehand, and I have mentioned it in many of my trainings, was that we were kind of taking pride to say, When you ask someone, oh, would you want to meet with me on this day at that time? And we will answer, oh, I'm sorry, I'm busy. Kind of saying I'm busy meant like I'm important. Kind of our ego kind of went up. But we experienced in one way or another a clear up of our calendars and to find out what is truly important. Friends, can you make a statement of what is it that you want to keep because you know it's actually important for your life? And what is it that you want to change? So you can keep the map and the compacts connected to what God wants to do in this world, to fulfill that call that we have to minister in this world and to be that light that brings joy to the families. Now, here is my extra invitation. And this one is a hard one, but I think it will work. It's hard, but it's simple steps. As your family, with your family. If you have gone back to the parish, great, you can still do this. If you haven't gone to your parish, this is my invitation to you. What if on Saturday you go as a family and receive the sacrament of reconciliation, and then plan for that dinner on that Saturday, a nice meal. And not like a Thanksgiving meal, but a nice meal as the family. Sit everybody around the table. And the leader of the family, their mom or dad or one of the older siblings, ask each member of your family what they have learned during this time, during these 6 months, about themselves and about their faith, and what are they going through. And have that dialogue as a family around the table. Then when everybody expresses their concerns or their joys or the things that they like, then bring back the Bible to the table. And one of you take the leadership to read the gospel of that next Sunday. And try to do a lecture divina as a family. Just try to go more in depth in that scripture. And then what I invite you to do is that Sunday, the next day, wake up the family, make it special, let them know something different is happening. Ask them all to dress up in the best, most comfortable clothes that they can have for a mass, more appropriate clothes that they have. And then go to mass. But when mass is over, I would like to invite you to stop for a second and take a picture of your family inside of the church. And as something that we don't do these days because of technology, I invite you to print that picture and put it in the refrigerator or a very visible place in your parish, in your house. Why? Because friends, 6 months from now, we might forget this desire that we have to receive communion. We are in historic moments, and it's important to be able to tell our family that in moments of hardship, we were the people of God that profess our faith and live our faith actively. So we can point at it. We can be reminded of it. This is an invitation that I know might be difficult, but it's an invitation that I know it can be powerful. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to give you a few minutes of silence. So you can start to look at it as an individual, as a minister, whatever ministry you are part of, or as an individual, or as a family. What are some concrete steps that you have learned and that you can take action on the months to come? Okay, friends, I know probably some of you are going to need more time to work on this, and this is okay. I just wanted to give you a little bit of time to start to reflect and catch the voices that you thought it was powerful in this presentation. Now, here is what I want to tell you. If you notice, my entire presentation was based on conversations that I have with people. All those stories are true. And the reason why I wanted to present this topic that way is because all those people were part of my parish. You know what is the beauty of the parish? The parish is a gathering of a multi-generational group, the gathering of a multicultural community that sees everybody as brothers and sisters in Christ. That is something that you don't experience in any of the many groups that you are part of. I also wanted to share these stories to let you know that the church is alive and you can feel the heartbeat once you interact with the parishioners and you can see Christ living through everybody's life. So that's why the church needs you, because if you walk away from it, your gifts that will be a joy and a gain for someone in the community will be missed. But at the same time, we will not be able to know how you're doing and to accompany you through this journey. The encounters with Christ keep happening, but you just need to be more alert. So I wanted to conclude with one of my stories of moving into the University of Notre Dame. As you can tell, I'm from Colombia, and all the cities that I live in the United States were usually in the south, so I always enjoy the good weather. But when the University of Notre Dame called me and offered me the job, I have always had the connotation of the university in the summer, because that's when I usually went to visit them. And when they said, okay, here is the contract, you are starting this day, I went, so excited. And very quickly, the weather turned into winter, which is an experience that is not my joy. I know you are all from Grand Rapids, so you experience winter the same way. I just want to let you know my first reaction when I saw a big, good snow. And that silence that you hear after a big, good snow. It was breathtaking to me, that I couldn't realize that the snow will make that compact experience to all the things around, so you could just truly hear silence. In a sense, friends, either we feel that we are going to a desert or that we are having that silence of God right now, remember, always remember that underneath the snow, there is new life coming out, and spring is just around the corner. So what I want you to do is look at the history of our church. And whenever we were struggling because we were feeling dry or lack of presence of holy people around us, there was always an important presence of new life, of saints that came and energized and multiplied ministries in our life. So when in your parishes you start to see new ministries developing, I invite you to welcome that creativity, because that might be the saints that God is sending us right now to just not only pass through this time, but to go into new ways to become even a stronger Catholics. Open your eyes and do not dismiss the saints are walking around you. And the best way to do so is the next time you go to your parish, if you haven't done so yet, introduce yourself to the person that sits in front of you, behind you, and to your right and left. I know we're going to be 6 feet apart, but introduce yourself. Let them know that you are there, that they can see you, and that you can see them. Friends, I hope this has given you the opportunity to reflect, to get excited, and in a very pragmatical way, you can start to look forward the new journey that you are going to embrace of your faith, of this encounter with Christ in the church. Thank you so much for your time.